welcome to Bold and Blunt. I'm your host, Cheryl Chumley, Christian conservative. Look at today's news, politics, culture, and events. And today's talk, the tyranny of big tech. And I have with me today Senator Josh Hawley on the day of his book's release, The Tyranny of Big Tech. And we're going to get into the details of what he's discovered in all his senatorial looks and scrutiny of the big tech censors. The big tech companies. So stay tuned for that coming up. I'm going to lay the groundwork for that interview with a look at how much money these big tech companies have made while we've all been struggling under coronavirus crackdowns. But before I get into that, heads up, Washington Times is offering a special deal for those who maybe have not subscribed yet to the Washington Times digital platform, and that is a 50% off deal for a year's access to all the Washington Times has to offer. That's commentaries like I write every day. That's great news, breaking and investigative, the stuff you're not going to get in other places, and that's podcasts like this Bold and Blunt one. So go to washingtontimes.com/Cheryl, and that's Cheryl with a C. You should know that by now. Type in your information and you'll have a year's access to all the Washington Times has to offer on its digital platform for 50% off. The deal's not going to last forever. I know regular listeners of Bold and Blunt have heard me offer this deal on numerous occasions, but trust me, it's not going to last forever. And while you're at it, please go to washingtontimes.com, find my name hyperlinked, click on it, and at the bottom of any one of my commentaries that I write there are links to sign up for my 3 times a week newsletter delivered right to your email box. That includes all my commentaries that I write on a daily basis. Right, all day long when I'm not doing my podcast, writing for the Washington Times, and it includes my twice weekly podcasts. Look, you don't want to miss great guests like Senator Hawley. You don't want to miss all the great guests I have on here and all the great things we talk about, from the great reset of capitalism to the loss of God-given rights in America, where I have pastors on. Yes, everybody and anybody comes on this show. Anybody that has an interesting perspective based in fact to give you, the listener, the tools you need to fight the socialists, the communists, the Marxists, the collectivists. The big tech censors, right? Listen to this headline. This was October 30th, 2020. As COVID-19 surges, this is from Vox. As COVID-19 surges, the world's biggest tech companies report staggering profits. Staggering. Despite antitrust investigations and a recession, big tech is doing great. Listen to what Vox reports. These numbers are striking. The numbers I will read you in a minute. These numbers are striking, not just for the tremendous amount of money these 4 companies are making. What companies? Amazon, Apple, Google, Facebook. But they're striking also because Amazon, Apple, Google, and Facebook seem to be defying this moment in history. Earlier this month, that was in 2020, remember, a long-awaited congressional report accused the companies of anti-competitive behavior, and some politicians are asking that they be broken up. Meanwhile, unemployment is double the rate it was in the beginning of the year, and numerous industries are struggling to stay afloat. I'm still quoting from Vox. But as many of us have been stuck at home, big tech services have been more important than ever, becoming the primary way many of us interact with the outside world. So what's been bad for restaurants, airlines, and countless other industries has been good for the world's biggest tech companies, end quote from Vox. So now for the numbers. Amazon, Apple, Google, and Facebook, remember this is August 2020, raked in a huge amount of money in the previous quarter, $38 billion in profits on nearly $240 billion in revenue. So they raked in $240 billion in revenue, $38 billion of it profit. Good Lord. We are good to these big tech companies, aren't we? Yes, we are. And that That represents a loss for Apple of 7%. Apple brought in $12.78 billion that quarter, which was 7% less. But Google, Facebook, Amazon, they all gained. And no wonder, right? Where did you buy during the coronavirus? Amazon. What did you do at home during the coronavirus? Got on social media, Facebook, to connect with people. What else did you do during the coronavirus shutdown? Got online, did a lot of searching on Google. Google, 59% increase, 11.28 million, no billion, excuse me, 11.2 billion in profits. Facebook grew 29%, 7.9 billion. And get this, Amazon, headed by that friendly Jeff Bezos who just skated unionizing his employees, right? His revenues grew 197%. 197%, 6.3 billion. That's not bad, not bad at all. So that was October 2020. You think, well, maybe things have leveled off, right? Maybe, big tech had a banner year and that was about it. Well, they did have a big year in 2020, but they're still posting record revenues. Tech giants. Now, I'm on CNBC, May 1st, 2021. In an article titled, How Much Revenue Tech Giants Like Amazon and Apple Make Per Minute. This is per minute, guys, per minute, right? My podcasts are about 30 minutes, so let's do the math at the end. Fun. Big tech had a big year in 2020 as the coronavirus pandemic did not stop the 7 biggest tech companies from growing in value by 3.4 trillion in total last year. You know what gets me about this is that these big tech gurus, right? These big tech bigwigs, they're all far leftists. They make their money based on America's free market capitalistic system. Right? They exploit the system to their great gain. And good for them. That's what American business is about. It's about making money. Sorry if that sounds, gauche to some people who like to think businesses ought to be in it for feeding the hungry and feeding the poor and helping the homeless. And that's great if you've got the revenues. I'm all for that. I'm all for moral leaders in the business world doing reach outs like that on behalf of the downtrodden. But the big reason to be in business is making money. And the more money you make in America, the bigger business you have, the bigger your business grows. That's how it works, free market capitalism. So 3.4 trillion, okay? But if you're going to make money off of the capitalistic system, and if you're going to make money off the back of American consumers, and if you're going to make money off free market enterprise, and free market principles and freedom in America, you better keep your mouth shut when it comes time to condemning people like Donald Trump, like President Donald Trump, right? You better keep your mouth shut when it comes time to talking about people who actually love the American system. And you better not take money from the free market consumers and then turn around and pour tons of money into the socialist party called the Democrat Party to kill the very system that made you your money in the first place. That's what gets me about these big tech people, not the money they make. I'm all for that. Don't even care about it, really. That's their business. They work hard. Go ahead. Reap the profits. Reap the financial whirlwind. But don't sit here and pour money into far leftist causes that in the end cripple the capitalistic system in America and flip the Constitution on its head. Okay, back to CNBC. Tech giants like Amazon and Apple, I'm just going to quote, posted record revenues in recent months, with both companies topping $100 billion in quarterly revenue for the first time in the final quarter of 2020. In fact, in Amazon's case, the e-commerce, right? E-commerce, because we're all stuck at home and ordering online. It pulled in more than $830,000 in revenue per minute $830,000 in revenue per minute. That's Amazon. Wow. All right, so let's get to the list, okay? Let's see how this is. They rated Amazon, Apple, Alphabet, Microsoft, Facebook, Tesla, and Netflix. And they based their findings on SEC filings from these companies. And then they took it and they did a little mathematical equating and so forth. And they broke down how much revenue they each made for every minute of the first 3 months of 2021. There were 90 days. And then by minute, that translates into 129,600 minutes in the first quarter of 2021. Okay? So Amazon made $837,333.25 in revenue per minute in the first quarter of 2021. Apple, $691,234.57 per minute. Alphabet, $426,805.56 per minute. Microsoft, $321,805.56 per minute. Facebook, $201,936.73 per minute. 201,936.73. Tesla, Elon Musk's Tesla, $80,162.04 per minute. And finally, Netflix, $55,270.06 per minute. I wonder how much of that is from the Obama's programming. Anyhow, so they're doing good. How are you doing? Right? How are you doing? How are you doing taking the stimulus dole out instead of going to work? Maybe you like that. Maybe you're one of those far left socialists that actually love this coronavirus clampdown because it lets you stay at home and binge watch Netflix. Well, all around you hardworking Americans go to work through the coronavirus storm and pay their taxes so the government can give you a stimulus check, so-called stimulus in air quotes, because what it is, it's free money, entitlement, so you can stay home. Maybe you're choosing to stay home because you get that extra $300 bonus per week from the federal government in addition to your state unemployment. So maybe you're one of those low information voters, drags on society that is just taking taxpayer dollars left and right and milking the system for all it's worth, which will go forward at least through September because Joe Biden wants that $300 boost to the unemployment to last through September. So maybe you're just milking the system, biding your time, waiting until you absolutely have to go back to work, and then take that cut and pay. Then take that cut and pay from the free money that allows you to stay at home and binge watch Netflix to back to work, working 40 hours a week, maybe even more at, thank you, Joe Biden, $15 minimum wage, which is pretty darn good for what? For work that should be paying, $7-8 an hour that is certainly not intended to be career work. But anyhow, maybe you're one of those people and you actually like the coronavirus shutdowns. But I'm going to be optimistic here, and I'm going to say most of America does not like it. I'm going to be really optimistic and say most of America looks at, say, those two fitness owners in New Jersey with their refusal to cave to the local bureaucrats' demand to shut their gym doors, and who even dared to go out and peel off the plywood and boards that the government pinheads nailed over their door of their business just so they can go to work. I'm going to go out on a limb here and be really optimistic and say there are more Americans like those two sane fitness owners in New Jersey than there are with the milk the system, stay at home, binge watch, Netflix type taking advantage of taxpayers. So if you're the hardworking American who has been suffering and struggling under the coronavirus, and then someone like Big Tech comes along, shaking its fingers at you, right, and saying, oh, you can't unionize my company. Thank you, Jeff Bezos. Or, worse, censors everything you say, right? So now you go to your social media accounts and, wow, first off, you notice Donald Trump can't speak out on social media anymore. Who else? Well, half the conservative world, it seems like. I mean, the conservative world, it's getting very dangerous in this country to be a conservative if you want to get your message out on social media, right? So maybe you're the hardworking type who has been refusing to take from the system and just pushing to get back to work. And here you are, fighting through all the bureaucracy and regulation and clampdown and putting your mask on even though you hate it, but because, the governor of your state is making you do it and your business owner is making you do it. And you go to work every day and you work your butt off. And then you come home and you read a report like the CNBC report that shows, or this Vox report that shows these same companies that are telling you what you can and cannot hear or listen to or read on social media are just reaping whirlwind profits during this coronavirus clampdown. Now, I ask you, is that American? If you're a big tech person, go ahead, make your money. But why do you have to censor the rest of the conservatives out there, right? The conservatives who go to social media, just like liberals go to social media, to gather, to exchange ideas, to gather steam and energy and motivation and inspiration from others who maybe feel the same way, maybe speaking the same language. Or maybe you just want to get some alternative viewpoints on the coronavirus or the vaccines. Boom, can't do it. Social media, stifling those ideas, stifling thought. Now, they're free market, they're private business. They certainly have the right to say who's allowed to post on their forums and who isn't allowed to post on their forums. But there comes a point where they become quasi-government entities, where are they actually allowing a free forum, or are they taking Section 230 privileges and clamping certain thoughts and opinions that seem distasteful to them? Well, certainly my guest today, Senator Josh Hawley, who has written The Tyranny of Big Tech and who saw and experienced firsthand the tyranny of big tech, trying to get his book published and offered for sale, certainly he has some inside information on what is going on with big tech, and more importantly, what can Americans do? What can Americans do without compromising the free market system that these big tech people are actually exploiting, right? They are weaponizing the free market against us. And it's time we put a stop to it. But we don't want to do it in a way that kills the free market, that stifles capitalism, that chills freedom in America further. We don't want government dictating ultimately who can post what, who can't post, who can publish this, who can't publish. So, Senator Hawley, thank you so much for being on Bold and Blunt. I really appreciate your time.
You bet. My pleasure.
And congratulations on getting Tyranny of Big Tech to the publishers. Maybe your next book should be called Tyranny of Big Publishers, right? I mean, the woke corporate culture. But let's talk first about your personal experience, your personal battle scars fighting big tech.
Well, this really began for me back when I was Attorney General of the state of Missouri when I launched the first antitrust investigation against Facebook and Google. And that grew out, to be honest with you, that grew out of my experience as a parent. And I was hearing, my wife and I, from so many other parents who were talking about what their kids were exposed to online and the tracking that goes on online and the creepy stories about these companies building profiles of their children. And then as we began to look into this, look at their data collection practices, how much of our personal information they take from us without our consent, they then sell it without our permission. And that's why we opened the investigation, the antitrust investigation. You know, back then, I couldn't get a single other attorney general, state attorney general in the country to join me in the investigation. And I'm proud to say that now, I think all 50 states and the District of Columbia have certainly open investigations, and most all of them now have full-on antitrust lawsuits against Google and also, I believe, Facebook, which is tremendous. So that's really how this started for me. And then in the United States Senate, I proposed legislation to break up these tech companies. I proposed legislation to stop their censorship of speech. And, of course, I've become their enemy because of that. They've come after me. They've tried to cancel this book. They've tried to cancel me. But I'm not going to back down, and I'm going to continue to fight to hold them accountable and to give normal, everyday Americans some power back over their own communications and over their own lives.
Let's talk about the data collection because most Americans either don't know about data collection and what it's used for or don't care because we're so busy just seeding our own private personal data just for convenience's sake. What's alarming about some of the data collection practices of big tech?
I think, first of all, how much of it they do without our knowledge. And what I mean by that is just if you have a Gmail account, for instance, or if you have a Facebook profile, or if you use Instagram, these companies will track, of course, everything you do on their platform. But more than that, they will also track everywhere you go around the web. They will track all of your behavior. They will track all of your interactions, and they will build a profile on you created from your activity online over time. They'll build that profile, and then they'll allow advertisers to use that to try and sell stuff to you, to try and influence you, and they themselves will use it to try and determine the kind of news that you see, the kind of information you get, what you're allowed to communicate. It's an incredible amount of information they have and control they have, and none of it with our consent. Here's the thing. You can't meaningfully opt out of any of this. Most of it, they don't disclose. They don't even really tell you what they're collecting. And even if you wanted to stop them from doing it, you couldn't unless you just completely got off of all of their platforms. That's classic monopoly behavior. It's classic, really, abuse of monopoly power, and that's why we need to stop it.
Do you find most people don't really care about the data collection that these big tech companies do, though? I mean, because the day and age we live in, most people, they think, so what?
I think that they care. I think they don't know. And where it really comes home is when there are data breaches. You think about some of these data breaches of companies that have folks' credit information, and when that happens, people
Hmm.
say, "Whoa, whoa, what's going on? I had no idea that that level of personal information was out there." I think similarly, when people find out the kind of personal, detailed information these companies have about you and they have about your children, if you've got kids, like, wow, that is scary. But they go to great lengths, the companies do, to conceal that from us because they're doing it without our consent. And so I think this is really an issue of people having control over their own property, in this case, over their data. And that leads directly to control over your speech. I mean, the reason these companies are so powerful is because they have so much information about us, and because they're monopolies, there are no genuine alternatives to them, and that's how they get to censoring us, controlling what kind of news we see, influencing the writing of the news itself, and all the rest.
I do find it somewhat chilling when I go and do a search, say, on a particular pair of boots or something that I want to buy. And for the next 2 weeks, I'm inundated on my social media pages with all kinds of alternative boots to buy. Now, that's no coincidence, right? That's the tracking, that's the algorithms, that's the surveillance.
That's exactly right. You know, even scarier is if you've got your location services enabled on your phone, and sometimes even if you don't. It's no coincidence that if you walk into a car dealership, let's say, all of a sudden, if you then log onto an app or log on online, you start getting pop-up ads about cars. That's not
Hmm.
happenstance. They know where you are. They use geolocation. That's some of the data they collect without telling you. They use geolocation data, and they use that in advertisements. They use it to track your movements. So this level of knowledge, I mean, it goes even beyond that. They can tell, Google, for instance, with its Android phone, Google can tell whether you are in a car or riding a bike, what level of a building that you're on. I mean, the specificity of what they know about us and how they're using that is really scary.
Now, why does Google need to know all that? Is that simply for advertiser reasons?
Well, that's what they would say. The real answer is they don't need to know all of that, and they try to use it. They try to monetize it for advertising purposes by creating this new category of advertising called behavioral advertising, and that's where they try and influence based on everything they know about you. They try to put in front of you pictures and words that they think will trigger a certain response, where they're actually manipulating you, and it's targeted towards you personally to try to put in front of you information that will cause you to make a purchase or to take some activity. I mean, it's an extraordinary thing.
Wow.
It requires extraordinary amounts of information. You have to build a dossier basically on every person to make it work, which is what these companies are doing. But here's the thing. These companies shouldn't be able to collect this amount of information without our consent. and they certainly shouldn't be using it to manipulate us without our consent. And that's why I wouldn't permit it. I would say to these companies, I think we need to do this in the law. If you engage in behavioral advertising like that and collect all of this data and try to manipulate us, you shouldn't get the special immunities from suit that the federal government currently gives to all of these platforms.
So you're talking about the Section 230.
I am.
Okay.
I am.
I'm glad you brought that up because there's something that's been concerning to me as a conservative for a very long time, and it's the idea of government regulating private businesses. And I know that the social media platforms in particular, they've taken on the public platform. They've become quasi-governments. But how do you deal with that? How do you, as a good, strong conservative, deal with clamping down on social media tech or big tech, but still maintaining conservative principles?
I think what we really have to do is promote competition. I think that's the fundamental bedrock conservative principle when it comes to the economy and the free markets. We believe in competition. That's why we don't believe in monopoly. Monopoly suppresses competition. It suppresses innovation. And that's why I think the most important thing we could do with these big tech monopolies is to break them up. We did this before. We did it a century ago with the last monopolies of this scope and size, the railroad monopolies, U.S. Steel, Standard Oil. We went after those monopolies because of their control over the economy. We, I think, should do the same with the tech monopolies. And the purpose of that is to introduce competition, allow folks to create alternative channels, alternative platforms. I think that's the single best thing we could do. We could also allow people to sue, individuals to sue and have their day in court if they have been discriminated against by these platforms on the basis of their political viewpoint. But just to get to your question about regulation, I don't really support a lot of regulation by government of these companies. I certainly don't want to do what the Democrats want, which is to have more censorship, have government telling these companies, use your market power, your monopoly power to shut off this voice and to go after this speech. And there's already too much of that. I mean, that's what we don't want to happen. The best solution is just more competition.
I love the idea of competition, and then came Parler, right? And so
right.
The plan B would be lawsuits, and I understand that Texas is actually going forward with some legislation to make lawsuits a possibility.
This, to me, is such a straightforward way to address a part of this problem. Here's the thing: all of these companies have terms of service that they purport to agree to and they purport to abide by, but they're not enforceable. So if Facebook, for instance, in their terms of service, they say that they're not going to discriminate against their users based on political viewpoints. If they do, however, there's nothing you can do about it. They have this immunity. I don't think that should be the case. I think we should say, listen, make the terms of service that they write, make those enforceable in a court of law. But the bigger thing, even bigger than that and more important, is breaking up the monopoly power. The biggest problem with these companies, and the reason that their censorship of speech matters, is because they have monopoly power and we don't have good alternatives. Parler's case in point. Parler, a competitor, a very small competitor, but a competitor to some of these companies. And what do? With a snap of their fingers, they basically deplatform Parler and erase it back in January because the monopolies say, oh, we're not going to let you use the cloud. We're not going to let you sell it on our app store. That shows you the kind of power these dominant platforms have.
And your voice is no doubt resonating well with most of America. But on Capitol Hill, you're kind of a lone voice up there with what you're saying right now. So how do you get others aboard to break up the monopoly of big tech?
I will tell you that I've seen a big movement on the Republican side of the aisle in the short couple of years that I've been in the Senate. And that's just really because Republican voters, I think, are saying more and more, we are not comfortable. We do not want these tech monopolies to have this kind of power over our lives, over our politics, over our government. And I think Republicans are really hearing that message. When I first started proposing breaking up big tech and taking them on 2 years ago, I couldn't, to be honest with you, I couldn't get much support on my side of the aisle. That's really changed. I think now that it's increasingly a consensus position, at least in the Senate, among Senate Republicans, that we do need to address big tech, that we do need to do something about competition, that we do need to open up space for competitors. And so I think that's great movement. I would just say to my Democrat colleagues, they've got to get serious about actually challenging these companies' power. I'm worried that the Democrats have really fallen in love with the power that these companies have because the Democrats can use that power to censor speech. And that's why the Democrats want more regulation. They want the companies, they want to control what the companies censor. They want to tell the companies how to censor, how to do more of it, how to do it better, and of course, all from a leftist point of view. And this big government, big business alliance is really dangerous. And the answer to that is break up the power. More competition, less power for big tech.
In just the minute we have left, in your book, Tyranny of Big Tech, out today, again, congratulations. What are some of the most shocking things that people reading it will find inside?
Well, we had a whistleblower come to my office, a whistleblower who worked at Facebook this past year. He came to my office, and he revealed that Facebook actually coordinates with the other dominant platforms, particularly Google and Twitter, about censorship decisions. So there really is a ganging up effect of these companies. He also revealed the extent to which Facebook tracks their users all around the web, not just on Facebook's platform, but on other platforms. If you use a different name on different accounts, Facebook has a device, an app that can track that. So the level of surveillance is extraordinary. If you read the book, you'll read about that, and you'll also read about the school kids and teachers who found that they use Google products in school, and then all of a sudden Google is storing their passwords at home, and Google is tracking what they do on their personal devices at home. Wow. It's an extraordinary amount of power and surveillance, and we've just got to confront it and give the American people real power back.
That's maddening, especially when you think how secretive these big tech CEOs are about their own privacy. So, hypocrites. Well,
exactly.
Senator Hawley, thank you so much. Tyranny of Big Tech. I know people can get it on Amazon and everywhere. It's a bestseller already. I wish you the best of luck, and thank you so much for your fight for freedom on Capitol Hill.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Senator Josh Hawley, there's a man with a plan to break up big tech. We didn't get into it, but he does have a piece of legislation out there, the Bust Up Big Tech Act, and it's something worth looking into if you have more interest in this topic. He just introduced it, I think it was in April. And so go to the website, look it up, check it out, and, give some support to breaking up these big tech giants, because sooner or later, it's going to come to a head. Big tech can't maintain this level of power and more forever. American citizens simply won't stand for it. So get your copy of The Tyranny of Big Tech. Support the causes of Senator Josh Hawley and others like him willing to take on this big battle against the oligarchs in the big tech world. Once liberty is gone, remember, it's really hard to get back. That's a wrap. Thank you for listening. Tune in next time. And in the meanwhile, stay blunt, stay bold.